Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. Another of my interview series today. And I'm very pleased because I'm talking to Sandi Adams, who is an investigative journalist into Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. Hello, Sandi.
Oh, hello, Richard. Thank you. Yes.
No, it's a pleasure to talk to you. We want to concentrate on this digital ID consultation that the government they've rolled out, but they don't seem to have told very many people.
No, it's been sort of rather snuck through the back door whilst we've been rather distracted with everything else, with the coronation, with the 15-minute cities, what's going on in Wales with the mothers, with the sex education and that stuff. So while we've been looking at other things, this has suddenly turned up, and I didn't know about it until the consultation was actually put out on New Year's Day, where nobody would be looking, really.
No.
And
it's not very long, is it? We've only got until the beginning of March.
I think it's the 1st of March, yeah.
So really, we've got 4 weeks or something to try and encourage people to have a look at it and get their views across.
And this was actually it was put into law, or, well, statute, I suppose, in 2017, where it was called the Digital Economies Act was brought in, and they said themselves that they would actually give it a sort of a brief consultation period. This was in 2017, and then it would become operational at a later date under secondary legislation. So they've kind of got it sewn up that if not enough people respond to this, and if nobody knows about it, how can they? Then it actually becomes secondary legislation and becomes operational by December of this year, which is a little bit concerning.
It's very concerning. And so, I mean, to be fair to them, they have published it. That might be their argument, that it's on their website. But of course, there's no media coverage about it. No one's being told about it. Not like when you have to do the census every 10 years. You've got to fill this thing in, and we're told on and on again. But this is a very important move that's supposedly very convenient for the consumer, so that you can sign onto any government website to identify yourself nice and easily, so that you can get your universal credits, perhaps that you need for universal benefit, or if you need to have anything to do your inland revenue, tax dealings, but anything to do with the government, with one PIN number, some form of digital ID. It's so convenient. But I think there comes with that a slight worry, because it's also convenient for the other side, for the government.
Yes, it is. It is rather convenient for the government because, as we know, all the technology is being set up to create an environment where your data can be sold on to third parties and be able to be a form of currency. And everyone knows about this. So as we know, and we do know, that banks create money out of thin air. So we've all been in debt slavery, we know that. And what's happening is it's transitioning into identity slavery. So that in order for you to access goods and services, you will need this digital ID. But worse than that, you don't know what happens to your data, because the data is the new gold, we know that, and it's being sold on. And we don't know what will happen to our data. And this is our private information. So this is all being linked up, obviously, to the central banking digital currency. And so, it's a difficult one to navigate when we don't know what will happen to this very private information of ours.
And the information that they want to collect is quite comprehensive information. Mm-hmm. So that they can identify you in many different ways, instead of just, say, your passport and a utility bill that most people might do if they're opening up a bank account or something like that. This is quite comprehensive data, all about you, that anyone from any department in the government could have access to. So it means that your data is pretty much on one system, all of your data. Yeah. Which then, of course, as you say, could be sold off to third parties or what have you, or indeed have breaches of that data that various different departments may not need all that data just to have identified you, as we haven't had in the past. But nowadays, with all of this, there's a lot held about you everywhere, which is a worry.
Yeah, it is a worry. And of course, it's not just government departments that will have it. I mean, obviously, they've got a list. They said it was the Cabinet Office, the DEFRA, DBS, the screening service. But this is also being shared with multiple stakeholders. We know that because the whole system is underpinned by stakeholder capitalism. And so what they're, it's so. Your health, for instance, your health data could be shared with insurance companies, which would adversely affect you if you wanted to apply for life insurance. They've got access to all of your data, and things like your shopping habits. They will know what you buy, where you go, what you do for your entertainment, what you do in your spare time. All of this is
so. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there. When you say you're going to your shops, how would they know if you're just buying over the counter, in your local supermarket?
Well, there's a whole load of biometrics coming into supermarkets that it's there already. Actually, if you go to and you'll probably be aware that the human tills are disappearing and replaced by these self-service tills, and with those self-service tills comes facial recognition, and it will be your face that will unlock your digital ID.
Right, so you could be at the till, you could be ready to pay for the stuff which you've decided to buy and is essential for you, and you go to pay and it's identified you, and for some reason it's made the decision that you are not able to use your bank account to pay for the goods. So you're stuffed. This could happen to you accessing your bank account. If, for instance, you have perhaps said something that is not compatible online or whatever, suddenly you can be locked out of anything. You can be locked out from good services and from financial, your finances. I have to say, it does seem like some sort of control mechanism that could be adversely affecting us. We all know that we make stupid comments, don't we? We sometimes put on some of the social media something we shoot from the hip, and then afterwards we think, actually, I didn't really mean that. That was a silly thing to say, and we can go back and delete it. And we're all creatures of mood, and we do silly things. But if what you've said is recorded and then put against your ID, your personal character, and so that then you do go and try and, buy some food, and suddenly they say, well, actually, because you've said this, and you've got no arguing with a till, have you? When you say, well, that was, it was just a joke, or I was just retweeting somebody else. And that could mean that people potentially could starve or, well, certainly not eat that food until they've somehow corrected themselves.
Yes. I mean, it really is. It's about permissions,
Yes.
And this is really difficult because we've all got used to living in a somewhat free society.
Yes.
And suddenly that freedom is not there anymore if this is implemented. Yeah.
So this could be an unintended, if we put it like this, it could be an unintended consequence of having all your ID in one place, that it might, work against you. And I'm sure, as I often say, a lovely benevolent government that's looking after its people and is there for the people certainly wouldn't want anyone to starve.
Oh, of course not.
And they would not want a situation where you're stuck at the till, the embarrassment of that, but the fact that then you couldn't go and feed your family would of course reflect badly on any government that had implemented that, I would have said. In the past, what we currently do, we have our identification in lots of different forms, and we don't have to provide every damn part of us. We don't have to say, look, here's my face, here's what my dentures look like, here's what my fingerprints are, here's my bank card, here's my birth certificate, here's my a picture of me on the beach on the Isle of Wight. We don't have to provide all of that just to say open a bank account or buy food, do we?
No, exactly. And
So why would we want that? Why would we want all of that information constantly available to anybody at the end of a terminal?
yes, exactly. And I think when you do go to this form and you read it, do bear this in mind, that in fact, anything could, this is all private information of yours that will be shared, with people that you don't know where it's going. It can be shared with other countries, and certainly used as a form of currency.
That's very well. I mean, it's all very well the government having it, which would be fine. But as you said, third parties that the government might, and they often do, and they have to, don't they? They outsource services to somebody else who may not be as kindly or have the same beneficial or benevolent interests that a government of a country has, because we don't vote for the third parties that might be using our data.
Exactly.
Which would be a worry. So what can we do then? How do we say to the government that, great idea, love the idea, what a great thing, we love technology and all of that, but maybe it's far too early to be thinking of this because people are at a different understand. Not everybody's online. Some people prefer to keep their stuff more private. How do we go about just advising the government on this form that maybe they need to think again?
Well, the form is very cleverly, and I know you did a wonderful sort of breakdown of filling in the form.
Yes.
It is. There's a lot of loaded sort of questions on it, and it assumes that you think it's a good idea anyway, and you've just got to, endorse why it is a good idea. They're not actually saying, could this, but there's a couple of questions that say, could it adversely affect, people? And that's possibly the only reason how it could be stopped, because this I did do a little bit of research, and this is what they did in Taiwan, because it was actually thrown out. A digital ID was thrown out in Taiwan at the consultation phase in 2018. And if you look at the breakdown of it, and I think I sent it to you, maybe you could put it on your website or put it on, linked to this talk. But it was a consultation phase, and it was really about how you can say, people could easily say, look, this is an invasion of privacy, blah blah, and they'll say, oh no, it's not, it's fine. But what you can do is go back to historical facts that have happened, and there have been cyber attacks on certain countries. There was one in Sweden in 2015 which took down the heating system, and people got cold in the winter. And so cyber attacks are a known thing. So you could say,
well, you think of Sony, they had a huge one, didn't they, where all the films were suddenly done. And I absolutely get that. If your data is all in one system, it's got to be available to people who are very clever, which would be terrible for somebody to have all the data of all the people in the UK. Much better, because you know what it's like with passwords. We all have the advice on passwords has always been have lots of passwords, don't have the same password, because once they've got it, so that would be a good reason to remind the government that actually having separate bits of data on different, I know it's a bit of a fag for them, but it's more beneficial and more secure for the government and the members of the public.
Yes, indeed. I mean, so cyber attacks are a very real threat.
Yes,
and that's a good argument, a very good argument, because it's not in the realms of conspiracy or whatever. It's a fact. Also, another fact is obviously identity fraud and identity theft. That's another.
And banks are always telling us about that. So that's a brilliant suggestion.
Since everything's gone online, banks have been turning cartwheels to try and really get over this whole hacking thing into people's accounts. So, and they've lost billions, a lot of the banks, compensating people. The other thing that I thought of on the consultation, it talks about could digital identity in any way disadvantage certain sectors of society. And I thought about this because their argument was, of course, they put an argument that it actually improves it, is that they were saying, well, there's certain people in society who can't verify their identity because they don't have an address, and that this would actually benefit poor people, homeless people, people who've just come into the country who haven't settled yet, all of this sort of thing, and that it would actually benefit them because they'll be able to verify their ID without a permanent address or utility bills, which is what you normally have to have.
Yes.
Verify anything, to open a bank account, anything. You need to have that. Well, with this, apparently, this is their way of selling it to you, is that, it'll make it much easier for you. But, conversely, you can look at the fact that it could be creating a digital divide between people, for instance, who are a lot of older people don't want this technology, don't understand it, can't even access that form because possibly they can't even use a computer, or an iPad, or even a smartphone. A lot of old people don't even have smartphones. So, and also, poorer people don't have the money to buy this digital equipment and to access all this information. So it's causing a digital divide. And I'm sure there is talk about them offering iPads and phones to people so that they can take up this technology. Whether people will be able to take up this technology is another matter.
But so, the business about them saying it's easier for people to identify themselves, people who are perhaps homeless or people who've come from another country or something like that. On the one hand, I see that, but on the other hand, surely, the fact that you've got to jump through a few hoops to identify yourself, to prove who you are, is an important thing, because otherwise anybody could claim to be anybody. Once they've got that digital ID, they can claim to be whoever they like, because they've got the ID. I would have thought that you're disadvantaged by having, this one thing, because as you said about identity theft and fraud, it means that somebody can come over from another country quite easily. Once they've got your identity, presumably you then become a nobody, because you can't identify yourself, and somebody can take your identity on. Whereas at least if you have got that utility bill, or you have got that driving license, you can say, look, that person is claiming to be me, but I actually live here. You can come round, knock on my door and try and push my house over if you like, because it's made of solid blooming bricks. So these are very good reasons why this process should be, thought again and presented to us in another 40 or 50 years. That a reasonable amount of time needs to pass, I think, before. And also, there are people who, I'm of a certain age where I've got one foot still in the analog world and the other foot in the in this digital world. But even for me, technology is going so fast. My kids pay for things on their phones by tapping their phones. I still have to, I'm either using cash, and I'm using more cash now than ever before, to be honest with you. I found it's a much nicer, more private way of dealing with things. But if I do have to use my card, I still tap out a PIN number. So I'm considered a bit of a dinosaur. And I think not everybody is ready to just move straight from the end of this year into a whole new way of thinking. I think a generation needs to pass.
Yes, and I wonder how, obviously we've only got a month where this consultation is available to answer to. What happens if people, well, because it hasn't been advertised, nobody's talking on breakfast television like they did, as you say, with the census. So only a few people. This is why we're doing this show, is to try and raise awareness. Because, but whether we can do it in 4 weeks is neither here nor there. I doubt we'll be able to reach that many.
Well, you think normally, and the government would spend millions on an advertising campaign just to let you know, something, how to save money heating your kettle.
And I hate to think it, but I feel that it will just sort of move into that secondary legislation, and by December they will try and force this on us. What will people do? What will people say? And can they do it by consent? Is it consent? Is it really consent if they're trying to push it through?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I suppose if people can use their feet by not shopping in the shops that force it on them. So, well, if I can't buy my food here, I'll go to the corner shop.
Yes.
And the corner shop hopefully will grow as more people go in and start to have the power of, we'll stick with cash, thanks very much.
Yes. But the thing is, they're bringing in the central banking digital system. How they're going to do that, I don't know, other than, break everything down and you'll have no choice but to sign up to the central banking digital system, which is all linked to your digital ID. This is all a big plan to bring it all together in one place. And, the thing about the central banking digital system is if you go back to, cash, when you spend cash, it's a transaction between you and the seller, and nobody else knows about it.
No,
it's completely anonymous.
And none of their business.
You've got credit cards where it's simply a transaction between you and your bank, and the seller gets their money at the end of the day, and it literally is a private transaction between you and your bank. The central banking digital system is linked up to a digital ID. It is actually a transaction between you and the central banking digital system. So they will track everywhere that you're buying stuff, what you're buying, what your health insurance is, what your house insurance is, every single thing will be trackable and traceable. And that I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, I don't think. I mean, unless you have some form of referendum, or you ask the people and you make this consultation a lot more public. As you said before, you're coercing people into something that they haven't agreed with, and I'm sure the British people and people around the world, as you said, are clever enough and intelligent enough to make up their own mind what system they want, rather than what system is convenient for a government to try and administer its population. The people have got to surely make the choice. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in a democratic society, would we? We're not in a dictatorship, thank goodness. And I know the people will do the right thing. So what we need to do is to get people to actually go and look. I'll leave a link in the description to the consultation. Yeah. And as you've alluded to, the questions are very difficult because they're almost forcing you to be very positive about, and you might not realize that, but there is an email address, and that's where you can really let vent and say what you really think and why you think perhaps, if you do, that this might not be the best idea.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at it, and it's very unclear because it says you can respond in two ways. You can fill in the consultation, and you can send an email. And whether one is more sort of important than the other, but I would imagine the consultation form is
yes,
the one that you've really got to do. But quite honestly, it would be very good if people bombarded, these civil servants with all these emails saying how much they really don't want this and they think it's a bad idea. And somehow, because it's a consultation period, they have to look through all that.
Yes. So, I mean, MPs, people can write to their MPs and say, look, because it's got to be recorded, hasn't it? It's got to be recorded that you've made a complaint and that you're not happy with it. And if the MPs have got an inordinate amount of people saying, actually, we don't want this, then it has to go surely back to the government and say, on the whole, great idea, but not for us.
Yeah. Exactly. And, at the end of the day, it's a currency of if you really want to boil it down, of permissions and compliance. And do we really want that? I certainly don't.
Well, people obviously can make up their own mind, and the link will be in the description. Sandi, it's been absolutely fantastic to talk it through with you, and let's hope that people do go and have a look at it and decide whether or not they want the government to know every damn thing about them, or whether they quite like a little bit of individual autonomy on the decisions they make.
Exactly.
It's been brilliant to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure.